Coming to you from an entrenched barricade deep in the heart of central North Carolina. Masculine Journey After Hours. A time to go deeper and be more transparent on the topic covered on this week's broadcast. So sit back and join us on this adventure. The Masculine Journey After Hours starts here now.
Welcome to Masculine Journey After Hours. We're back in our foundation series, and we're talking about in the beginning. In our last show, we just talked about the beginning of the ministry and how it got started. And so we go to our first boot camp. If you're picking up, if you're not, go listen to the old show. I'm not going to recant anything or recap whatever it is. You know, last week you missed this, whatever, the recap. That's what I was trying to think of. We go to our first boot camp, and we have no clue what we're doing. You know, we've been to a couple boot camps, and we have the guide on how to run a boot camp. Yeah. Right. And so we kind of know what to do.
Boot camps for dummies.
It kind of was. It really kind of was. And I did like I did in school. I kind of perused it. I didn't really read it. You know, it's kind of like the Cliff Notes. Yeah, the Cliff Notes version of, you know, when it's a Cliff Notes version of the book for dummies, you're not getting a whole lot out of it. Right. But we go to our first boot camp, and God's grace was there. And he covered us for the first several boot camps until we kind of figured out a little bit more what we were doing.
For sure. I mean, I remember how brutal that was. First of all, we did it in 2 nights, not 3.
Right.
We did all 17 talks.
Yeah, between 3 of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no, Jim did a talk too.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He did. 4 of us did.
There was 4 of us, but
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was brutal, and it was very, very brutal. But God rescued us very quickly. Gave us some wonderful feedback from that. Mm-hmm. Most of it didn't sound like, please don't ever do that again.
No, it was gracious for sure.
We had, you know, several guys from that camp that, you know, came and said, hey, can we start kind of walking together and, mm-hmm. you know, that sort of thing. And that was a huge step because in some ways, it was a little bit of validation that, okay, maybe we did hear God correctly.
Right.
And, you know, Robbie, right before we came on, said that boot camp was in March. That advanced boot camp was in March of 2009, and we did our boot camp in November of 2009, which should have told you idiots how fast I move. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's just go there. So that should have been,
you know, because they came to me, you know, to get my part into the story was in the spring of 2009. I met in what used to be the conference room here was Stu, and he was like, these guys want to advertise this, you know, adventure that they're going to put on, and you know. Boot camp was a strange word to me. Like, why would you call this boot camp? I'm like, what's up with that? And then they oh, this isn't. And they were said if they told me once, they told me 50 times. Now this isn't a retreat. You know, we're not retreating from anything. This is this is going to be different than anything you've ever experienced in your life. I get it. I heard that about it.
Every retreat you've been to says that, right?
Yeah. Right. And they went over and they gave me these sound bites and all this stuff. And they spent $1,000 to promote it, which was a significant investment to make this happen. And I'm like, man, you know, here we go. So I, you know, put them on my shows, did everything I could possibly do. And to my knowledge, I guess we got one camper that attended based on that. And so I was like, man, I got to go to this thing. It was like a mercy date. You know, I don't know what in the world they're doing, but we got to see it. And honestly, it was quite the experience that when I arrived, you know, my problem then is not unlike my word for the year for 2026. I wasn't wholehearted. Like, I was supposed to come, it was Friday night, but I didn't come till Saturday after I did my shows, right? And this thing only went Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it was more than half over by the time I got there. And, you know, Darren is in his boxer shorts. And, oh, hi, Robbie. I'm like, what the heck?
I wasn't outside.
Yeah, I wasn't on the stage
in my
or
house.
Yeah.
I was in the place that I was supposed to be in my boxer shorts. But anyway.
Anyway, that's all. I don't remember anybody leading me into the house. All I remember is this picture of the guy. And I'm like, okay, well, and what's this? And there, you know, and And then I go, and again, since I was right in the middle of it, the very first talk, they had a covenant of silence. And for those who don't know what that means, that they have a discussion, which probably, based on what it was, might have even been a new name talk. And after the talk, they're like, well, now you need to go out with these questions and ask God and see if you hear from God. Well, for me, at this point in my walk with God, this was like, really? These guys talk to God? Like, I've been talking to God for years, but I don't really tell anybody that because they look at me like I'm nuts. And, you know, some of them throw the Bible at me and they get really mad when I talk about that. You know, I literally pray and sometimes God answers, you know, and he gives me suggestions on what I should do. And actually, even at that point in my life, God orchestrated every Christian car guy show I ever did. And so I didn't do a show without knowing what God had put on my heart to do. And so when these guys started actually like validating what it was I thought was really top secret information, like not to be spoken of, then I was indefinitely, you know, intrigued. And then they showed the movie Deliverance that night.
Defiance,
not Deliverance.
We have never showed Deliverance at a boot camp.
No, Deliverance has never been
maybe
shown
that
at a
ties
boot
back
camp.
to Darren and his underwear.
Yeah, there's no correlation there.
It was quite a scar.
That's why
Robbie,
they call it After
Robbie
Hours.
has.
Anyway,
There were no banjos involved.
Yeah.
Defiance, whatever it was, it could have been Deliverance from my standpoint because I was in such shock factor. You got to realize I worked for Truth Broadcasting, and you know, at this point in time, I'm pretty indoctrinated into things that are done at a camp and things that aren't done. And you know, I was honestly in a legalistic environment that I didn't realize I desperately needed to get out. And so as I began to see what this was, it was such an invitation into an intimacy with God that I'd had for some time, but I never could share it. And so now I had brothers that were walking with God like I am walking with God. And then, of course, as I began to read Wild at Heart and hear these things, I have this clip about from John Eldridge and Craig McConnell, which are, you know, some of the founders of what was Ransom Heart at the time, the ministries that became Wild at Heart, and how core the idea of literally walking with God is to this message, and why it offers such freedom. Is it's really hard. It's at the heart of the situation is the intimacy with God.
As we have counseled men and women, as we have walked with one another, we've discovered that this is the key. This is core. There's a sense in which you can teach a principle, you can share a story, you can learn a lesson, but that doesn't help you solve all of the dilemmas of your life. If you learn to walk with God, that's the key. That's the key to life. It's certainly the key to the Christian life. And developing a conversational relationship with God is something that is available to every person, wherever they are in their spiritual journey. We're designed for intimacy with God. We're designed for the sort of give and take that you see people enjoy with him in the Bible. And the Lord said to Moses, then Moses said to the Lord, David inquired of the Lord, and the Lord said to David. All those stories are simply pictures of the normal Christian life. But it's been our experience that most people actually don't enjoy that they don't know that they can hear the voice of God, or they don't know how to develop that sort of conversational intimacy that really is available with God.
I wonder what our paradigm or the glasses we approach Scripture are. I mean, it's huge. If we approach Scripture with an understanding that the flow, the theme, the thrust, the whole purpose of Scripture is relationship, intimacy with God, that's so different than approaching it as guidebook, truth, morality, doctrine.
Yeah.
I mean, relationship requires and speaks of something more than just, you know, what's on the written page here.
And without being dramatic, can I just underscore that is maybe the most important thing that we'll say, not just in this conversation, but maybe through the entire ministry of Ransomed Heart. That idea that this is calling me into an intimacy with God, into relationship with Him.
Yeah, and that there was the hook. It was an invitation into an intimacy with God to go deeper into what I'd already been experiencing, but to find ways to even learn through the scriptures more of, what Jesus meant in John 5. You may know in John 5:39, it says, search the scriptures. They testify to me that is me, that this is the experience that you would come to me. And when you look at that opportunity, that invitation, it not only obviously was amazing to me, but in my ministries that I'm part of, to watch another man hear from God. Mm-hmm. Like, you can see a lot of things in your life, but when they know they heard this from, and they had the experience, and it came from God, it didn't come from me, it came from God. It may come through the scriptures, but often it just came like, Robbie, I heard this, and I watched it change their life in my own brother's life, mm-hmm. right? That I've seen it, and I'm talking about my biological brother, but I can't tell you the number of brothers that you see things that are on the miracle scale of miracles, like the story of Josh, which was a heartbreak of heartbreaks, mm-hmm. as we had a camper that heard his name. He heard that he was supposed to restore his family. He heard miraculous things in a very, very, very broken situation. Young man, and unfortunately, within a year and a half of that, his brother, threw it up by accident, cleaning a gun, shot and killed him. And we went to that funeral.
Mm-hmm. That was hard.
And after the funeral was over, the parents, what looked like a conversation that you just did not necessarily want to have, ended up being a life-changing conversation for the three of us, in that they were like, you guys don't know what our family would have been if Josh hadn't come to that camp. And he reconciled us. And, he only had a year and a half left, but their family, like you say, like those families that have been touched years and years and years after, we just get a taste of it at times. But it came from not anything I taught, but something that God did through the ministry.
Yeah. And if you remember, the irony of using a guy, me, who used to teach. I was cemetery trained in the art of not hearing God, but reading him straight, from Scripture in the raw form. And I believed that, and I taught that, and then I'm the guy that hears from God, and 6 months later is helping lead a boot camp to help other guys start hearing from God. And if you'll remember that night, again, this is very comical to me, but that night I think I threw all of y'all for a loop when I said, I think we're supposed to pray over all these guys.
The night of Joshua. You're right. You're exactly right. I'd forgotten that.
And we're supposed to let them stay in here instead of a covenant of silence if they want to, and we will pray over them and hopefully hear from God what God has for that person.
Right, and this is amazing now that you bring that detail back, and that's huge. For those who don't know, I haven't been to a boot camp, we do a new name talk where we're actually going to send the guys out to hear their new name. And this was the first time you ever did that. You said, let's ask guys if they want us to pray over them. And what we now know was, Josh was crying. And he didn't stay to get prayed over. Mm-mm. He stayed because he was embarrassed. And so he threw his hood over his head. Mm-hmm. He was wearing a hoodie like I'm wearing right this minute, actually. And he threw it over his head and almost hid out. And I can remember all of us because, man, this dude must need prayer because he's under his hood like that.
Yeah.
And What a thing. And he even went on to explain, what he was crying about.
Yeah.
Was just part of what God had orchestrated all that day. To live that, to see what God did.
And God used you in a massive way the next morning when he just very, casually said, Robbie, what are you using for bait or something like that? And you said,
what? Just go in my tackle box, grab anything you want. And he lost it again because his father never let him touch his tackle. That would be nothing but I didn't think anything about it. Go get whatever you need. And, God, he referenced that in the letter that he sent after he'd heard his name. It was all miraculous things, but God put an exclamation point on the events after that, but we don't. I can name lots of people in my church that heard from God for the first time. That my own wife and lots of other people, that once they become aware that this is available, and yes, it has to be, yes, the scriptures are very much involved, and yes, scriptures trump but oh my goodness, what's available. So
absolutely. I'm going to move along so the other guys can get in. Great stories, guys. Great memories there. Harold, in the steps of things of who came in, you would have been the next person to kind of come in and be involved with the ministry. And you actually helped lead us to Caraway Bible Camp, which we were there for quite a few years. Not Caraway.
Carolina.
I'm getting them all. I don't know. I can't remember. Carolina Bible Camp.
Well, I actually don't remember when I first got started with this, but it came, oddly enough, this is the masculine journey, but my connection started from my feminine journey. My sweetheart and I have now been married for 61 plus years, and she was listening to the Truth Radio, and she was hearing Robbie, and then she ran into someone that said that Robbie did a Thursday morning Bible study at the Brock Center there in Moxville. Well, I was not interested. They were meeting at the time. The meeting was at 7:30. I'm a night owl. I don't get up early, or I don't want to anyway. So I booked. I didn't want to go. Well, she was really wanting to go, but she wouldn't go without me. So I finally gave in, and my initial introduction to the group was through the Thursday morning meeting there in Moxville. Well, as we were going to that, then she starts hearing about boot camp. Well, I don't want to go to boot camp. I don't need that. I'm good. But through her persistence and asking me, don't you really think it would be a good thing for you to go to boot camp? So I finally consented that I would go to boot camp. And as it turned out, I couldn't get away and get there, so I got there late in the evening. Everybody was already going to bed and so forth. Well, the only bed left was an upper bunk with no ladder to get up there. Now, I'm 5'7" at best, and I had to try to climb up and get in that bunk.
Swing the other mic for
whatever. Yeah, for some reason that cut out.
And then, as it turns out, the person in the bunk below me is snoring like a freight train. So I get up the next morning, and I am not real thrilled about what's taking place. But I sat through the rest of the camp, and when it ended and I was leaving, I had a whole different attitude about it. And I then wanted to become more involved. And I really can't remember. It's been several years, but I wouldn't change it for anything, because I came from a very, very conservative background, and I didn't believe that God would speak to me directly. It had to come out of the Bible. If I can't read it, it ain't true. And I see things differently now. there is a God, and He ain't me.
Yeah.
And there was a time that I was very judgmental. If you needed to know anything, ask me and I'll tell you. But I've grown, and I give a lot of credit to the guys that I'm in the room with now, and the fact that I have attended boot camps. And I've been we now meet at 9 a.m. on Thursday morning, which is much better for me. But I've been consistent now for quite a few years with the Thursday morning meeting that Robbie conducts there in Moxville. So I would encourage anybody out there to get involved. You can change. If I can change, anybody can change.
Well, thank you, Harold. Danny, we're going to skip out order. Andy would technically go next, but he deferred to Danny. So, Danny, we got a few minutes left. We sorry to cut you to kind of close, but talk about your time when you kind of came into the ministry. We have about 5 minutes, so you have some time to talk. Just
okay.
Whatever God's got on your heart, why don't you share that with us?
Well, we were part of a ministry in Asheboro, and I had taken a job up in Winston. And I was the director of the ministry, and I knew about, I'm a little slow sometimes, I knew about 6 to 8 months before we actually decided we were leaving Asheboro to give up, to hand the reins off to the ministry. Because I didn't want to, because I was like the director. I had a title,
Yeah.
But in the course of that, we had begun to dive back into the Wild at Heart stuff. And we were reading Fathered by God by John Eldridge at the time. And I thought, you know what? It'd be cool if we could find a boot camp. I wonder if somebody does it locally or something, kind of being the guys go. And so we found these guys that did these boot camps out in Moxville, North Carolina. And I talked to this guy named Robbie Dillmore on the phone. And he said, well, we do things a little different. And I thought, okay, these are my kind of people. If you do things a little different, I'm in. I don't even care what it is. But they said they did the talks live. In other words, they did their talks. They didn't play the videos. And I thought, well, I like that even better. But so we signed up, and we came out to, it ended up being up in near Danville, Virginia, because it was during COVID. And I think the target moved to several times. It ended up being a summer boot camp instead of a spring boot camp. And, we came out, and, and I had read Wild at Heart years ago, several books, and, it was kind of like a man on an island for a while, because there wasn't nobody else around me doing it. So, who do you talk about it with, And so here we are, and we, come to boot camp, and get to talking, and a guy named Darren says that, he says, hey, I hear you living in King. We're practically neighbors. I live about a mile from you. And then I'm building a house, and there'll be a mile on the other side. I'm like, I'm surrounded somehow or another. But you guys invited me to the radio station, after we got back home and that kind of thing. What really was amazing to me was that, I left a band of brothers in Asheboro. And, my heart's longing was for, a band of brothers that we did life together and that kind of thing. And we kind of did most of that in Asheboro. I still got dear friends down there. And Jim Biddy and I have, we've been hanging out for quite some time. But it was literally like God picked me up out of Asheboro, brought me to King, and plugged me into you guys. It was literally like just moving a lamp in the house. Unplug the lamp over here and plug it in over there. And the ministry has done so much for my heart, because diving into this message, and there were things that needed to be undone. And we talk about Shrek around here a lot. There were plenty of layers on the onion, and there's still plenty left. But I have found so much freedom, and so much lost a lot of my legalistic self that I would have told you I didn't have, but I did. And lots of different things, and doing life with you guys is awesome. I mean, the last year has been really tough.
Yeah, it's been tough not having you here, Danny, and we miss you greatly, man. We can't wait till you're able to come back to studio with us.
Well, we made good steps today, so we're beginning to eat again. So
Yeah.
I'm coming. So get ready.
Yeah, you get onto some solid food, man. It won't be long you'll be here. Well, Andy, I know you don't have much time, but sorry we didn't get to part of your story. But you came to a lot of boot camps, and then go ahead and pick up from there, and we'll try to see what we can get in.
Well, how I found out about boot camp is I really was late to getting to the Wild at Heart. I knew that I needed it. It was an intriguing book that I knew a little bit about but never read. I read it, and then it made such an impact on me. And I just happened to be in a Panera Bread in Kernersville when you guys had posted an advertisement for the boot camp. And I think I reached out to Darren, and it took me about a year to get the courage to actually go because I was quite the loner at that time. Life was not good, broken family and marriage and all. But I went, and it was impactful. I don't think I've missed ones that you've had since then. So that tells you the impact that it made, and it truly has brought healing. A band of brothers. You don't know what you don't know, but when you do know, you know what works. You know what changes your life, and you stick with it.
Well, Andy, and so you've been with the team, gosh, a decade now.
Yeah.
Right. And so, man, it's been great sharing some of our foundations with you of the beginnings. We're going to continue this series. We'll pick up with something next week that's different. If you have any questions for us, please just go ahead and reach out to us at our first name at masculinejourney.org. So Andy at Masculine Journey, Danny at Masculine Journey, so forth. And we'd love to hear from you. This week, let God love on your heart. Let him move you closer to him and love on somebody else. We'll talk with you next week.